Hi, Rebecca. How are you?
Good, thanks. Nice to see you all.
Good, good to see you too. Just gonna wait until maybe 11:03, 11:04.
Rebecca, are you associated with USCRI at all? United States Committee for Refugee and Immigrant?
No, we are actually Carolina Refugee Resettlement Agency is an affiliate of the Highest Network. So we're another resettlement. We're one of the other resettlement agencies. One of the, I guess,
Oh,
the
okay.
seven that are now in the contract. Yeah, for sure. But we know we have our partners. Yeah, we know the USCRI folks out in Raleigh. Absolutely,
Yes, I was going to say I've worked with them a few times over the last couple of years
that's great.
with some, it seems to be with poultry facilities most of the time in the
Yep,
Raleigh area.
yep,
So when
yep.
I saw your tag on there, I was like, I wonder if she knows them.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Yep. USCRI is one of the nationals, and yeah, we're doing all the same work
Yeah,
with the same contract for sure. Absolutely, that's
busy
great.
work.
Hmm? Busy
It's
work?
very
Yes.
busy work. You guys, at USCRI, that's like it's like constantly moving.
Yeah.
So yeah, awesome.
I'm actually working with Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Jessica. Good to see you.
You too.
Okay, well, I think we're gonna get started in a couple of seconds here if nobody filters in by 11:04. But for everybody here, thank you for being here and taking time out of your schedules. I'm excited to talk about this topic. So today we're going to be talking about how we can address some common workforce challenges throughout the region through better commutes and commuter benefits like van pooling. And yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started. So my name is Rose Tomlin. I've met some of you on this call, but I'm a regional planner here at Centralina Regional Council. I work primarily with our Connect Centralina program. So that's our transportation demand management program. We work with employers, employer groups, economic development groups throughout the region to see what commuting barriers they're facing and how those interact and interface with workforce challenges and see ways that we can reduce them. And one of those ways is van pooling. And that's why we have Talitha Walter on this call today from Commute with Enterprise. And she is going to be explaining to you how van pooling works, how it can improve workforce outcomes, and ways that you can use it, whether you're an employee or an employer that would like to offer it as a commuter benefit. So I would love to just get to know who is with us today on the call. So if you feel comfortable dropping your name in the chat, where you work, your organization, and your title, that would be great. I think a lot of you did a great job of putting your name and your organization at least as your Zoom setting. But I think it's good to just get to know everybody on the call for the people that are here. And while you're doing that, I would like to emphasize that this is meant to be an interactive webinar. So we have a pretty intimate group with us today. So I would love any comments, questions, concerns, agreements, disagreements. They're all welcome here. So we want you to be kind of helping us learn from you as much as you're learning from us today. So I also want to just get us started getting in the mindset of thinking of our own experience as we're commuting. So take a second and think about what mental image comes to mind when you think about your daily commute to work. And if right now you're working remotely, think about a time when you were commuting to work. So I do hope it looks something like this, but I'm assuming that when we're thinking about commuting in the Charlotte region, it probably looks something more like this, or like this, or like that. And with construction coming up on 85 and 74, unfortunately, it might start looking something like this. So the reason I have us start like this is because it's not a secret that commuting in the Charlotte region is not a pleasant experience. And unfortunately, it's not projected to get any better. But we've kind of normalized the stress and the burden and the cost of commuting as just a daily part of life, and more importantly, as an expectation of having a job. But what if it could be different? What if there's a way that we could reduce some of those costs and the stressors associated with it? And what type of impact would that have on our satisfaction with our job and the impact on the workforce? So I do just want to level set too and explain some regional dynamics that contribute to why Charlotte is maybe not the best area to commute in. So we've had a lot of people moving here recently and a lot of major business expansion. And these are obviously reasons to celebrate, but unfortunately, it's kind of pushed housing costs and cost of living up, and that's pushing people further away from major job centers and job opportunities. So the result of that is you have a lot of people that are commuting further distances than they ever have before and more expensive commutes. So that kind of old assumption that people live near where they work and they live near where they go to school is no longer intact. So now you have somebody that might be living in Gastonia, working in Mecklenburg, going to school in Cabarrus, and they're commuting all around this region every day. So for employers, when you think about that, the burden that that places on employees might start to manifest as they start looking for work closer to home, or they start calling out more often, or they start turning down opportunities that might be a great fit for them because they upfront understand the cost and the burden of commuting. So this is kind of just to get us in the mindset of, well, what's the realistic commute? Like, what do we even think it is in this region? So I'm just going to ask you to take a second and think about what do you think the average worker in our region is commuting? And we'll just wait a second here. Okay, so between 20 to 35 minutes and 30 to 50 minutes. So the average time is about 30, but it is going to be increasing. So it's projected to start increasing. 30 minutes sounds pretty manageable. But again, we've kind of normalized the stressors and burdens of commuting. So 30 minutes each way, that's also the average. So you have employees that are also commuting 40 minutes, 45 an hour. And really, when we start to think about it, the cost of commuting is almost $9,000 a year. And that's 19% of your annual income. So again, these are the things that we might not consider or think about, but what does that look like for a shift work employee who is commuting an hour each way every day for a 7 a.m. shift or an 11 p.m. shift? And they're also dealing with rising costs of childcare, rising costs of rent. And more importantly, what could that look like if we started to reduce some of those costs and that stress on that employee? So these are the ways that commute distance is quietly shaping workforce decisions. So commute distance is already the second most important factor when someone is making a job decision. And without realizing it, you probably have considered work or commute distance in your job decisions as well. So it's second only to pay and compensation. So the second thing people are asking is, well, how far away is it? Because subconsciously people know that it really does impact their life. So especially commutes that are over 40, 45 minutes are linked to significantly higher turnover intentions. It was also the number one reason that people resisted return to office mandates, which is why bigger companies like Amazon are changing their entire employee compensation and benefits package to include commuter benefits in there. So you can have commute or employees in office, but you want to make sure that you're accommodating for some of those stressors that they're dealing with. So 72% of companies are now offering commuter benefits like vanpooling since 2024. And it's important to understand that for talent attraction, when we're looking at the younger generations, they're valuing things like, you know, work-life balance. They want things like remote work. They want things that are going to reduce their daily burden and daily stress. So already you need to be thinking about ways to do that, especially if you can't offer remote work. So recently in conversations that we've been having, we've been seeing that employers are discovering that when you kind of make the commute easier or when you start to include it as part of the job, the kind of math and experience that your employees have changes. So with that, I will hand it over to Talitha to explain van pooling.
Good morning, everybody. Again, thanks for jumping on with us as we talk through Vanpool specifics. As Rose mentioned, I do cover the state of North Carolina, so the whole thing, and then a little bit of that small sliver of South Carolina in like right outside of the Charlotte area. But what I do is I partner with organizations across the state really to enhance their benefits package by implementing our Vanpool program. I'll talk a little bit more in detail about how we partner with transit agencies as well. But yeah, that's me. I've been with Enterprise for 11 years now. Most of that time was spent in the daily rental space, our most popular brand, Enterprise Rent-A-Car. So I spent about 8 years managing different rental car facilities, New York, Vermont, and then finally settled here in North Carolina. But we'll go ahead and get into it. I'll give you a quick overview of who Enterprise is, what we do, our mobility solution across the board. We'll look at some trends that we're seeing across the country. A lot of these are trends that, of course, we're seeing in North Carolina, the Charlotte region. And then we'll look at program specifics. How does vanpooling work on a daily level? And then how we go about implementing it at organizations if they do decide to participate. So Enterprise has been in the transportation business now for over 60. Can I control this, Rose, or are you moving through the slides? Cool. Enterprise has been in the transportation business now for over 65 years. And during that time, we've really tried to establish a strong reputation of prioritizing people, all while pushing mobility forward. As you all can imagine, the landscape of mobility has certainly changed over the last 65 years, but so have we. You were just looking at Chrissy Taylor. That is actually our founder's granddaughter. So not many people know, but Enterprise is still a family-owned business today. Our founder took a very simple approach to the business. It was take care of your employees, understand people's problems, listen to them actively, and then establish methods and programs to help meet those specific needs. This has resulted in a diverse portfolio. You can go ahead and move forward, Rose, with some very popular brands I'm sure you all are familiar with Enterprise Rent-A-Car, truck rental, fleet, and then, of course, what we're here to talk about today, Enterprise Vanpooling. This is a snapshot of what we're doing across the country. We've been in operation for over 30 years. This predominantly started on the West Coast. The West Coast always seems to be ahead of the East Coast on implementing this kind of thing. But yeah, we are moving about 60,000 people per day in van pools. We've got over 10,000 active van pools. And then, of course, my favorite number I always like to say is the cost savings. It's over $724 million of cost savings to the individual consumer year over year. Anybody want to jump in, pop in the chat, anything that stands out to them on that slide specifically? I'll give you 10 seconds. I'll move on if nobody does.
Especially considering the cost of commuting statistic we mentioned before, 19% of annual income is going to commuting. So this cost saving, Talitha, I think is really great to touch on too. So maybe it's something we can come back to at the end as well.
Yeah. And it's really important to note here, you see in the bottom corner of that, the public funding partnerships. We've had a lot of success with implementing van pools across the nation, but it's so important to point out that this is not something we do alone. You can go ahead and move forward. Much of our success really is grounded in those partnerships. We team up with public transit agencies. So we're working with over 100 transit agencies across the nation. 2 of those 100 are right here in North Carolina. We're partnered with Go Triangle in the Raleigh market, and then with Charlotte Area Transit System in the Charlotte market. And what we do with those 2 organizations is we actually run their Vanpool program. So those 2 transit agencies, they provide high levels of funding for their vans. And that's where a lot of this growth and success comes from. We also collaborate with the work sites. So you see on your screen a couple of our notable partners across the country, Chevron, Pfizer. But these are just 3 of 1,500 work sites that have enhanced their benefits package by implementing Vanpool programs for their employees. Now I want to go ahead and look at the trends that we're seeing across the country. So these trends, usually this is pretty conversational. I don't know how conversational everyone wants to be today. But if people could just throw it in the chat, we'll get to it when we get to it. This is what we're seeing across the country. So Rose already hit on a lot of these: economic pressure, RTO and flexible working, time efficiency and traffic congestion. These are all different things that really affect that employee and what they think about the commute. Is anything popping in the chat?
Or do any of these surprise you? Do you see any of these and you're surprised? I think the least surprising one to me is the millennials and Gen Zs, because they're kind of changing the benefit landscape. But
There's a question in the chat of what is RTO?
That's a great question. You know what? I say this all the time. We speak in acronyms, and I often wonder, like, do people understand our acronyms, or is this like our own language? That's the return to office. So we're seeing this at organizations across the state. I think it's Fidelity that just put out a couple weeks ago that they're making all of their employees come back at least 4 days a week. Personally, I've actually been working a lot with federal agencies across the state because of their return to office. Every federal employee is coming back 5 days a week. So we're starting to see vans pop up at medical centers, FBI field office, Environmental Protection Agency, places like that. But yeah, RTO, return to office. That's a great question. So this is what it looks like by the numbers. Rose already mentioned when we actually got our latest data from our corporate team, which gets a lot of their data from AAA. I was shocked by the 19% salary spent on a commute annually. But there's a lot of concerning numbers, I think. It's got a lot of information on it. Take a second to digest it. But average age of vehicle in years, Americans without access to public transit, that's a huge number. And I think that's really shocking. I think in the Centralina region specifically, too, you think there are some pretty rural areas where our bus lines, they just don't touch it. And the nice thing about the Vanpool program is that, like I mentioned, we are an extension of public transit. So we get that special funding that public transit gets, and we kind of fill the gaps where traditional transit can't reach. But 55 minutes a day is the average time spent across the country commuting. So right on par with actually the Charlotte area, 30 minutes one way. So yeah, but so these trends, they, of course, as the individual consumer, the individual driver, you can see that they're going to have implications, but they also have implications for employers. So one of the most apparent expenses for employers is probably related to facility costs. We hear that a lot. Ownership and management of parking spaces, can accumulate rapidly. Some reaching up to $28,000 per parking spot. Another really shocking number, and I feel like if you don't sit in facilities, maybe the folks who do are not surprised, but I think people outside of that are blown away by the cost of a parking spot. So as the needs and expectations of commuters change, employers, they actually face less visible costs. We call these invisible costs, but during the COVID pandemic, so many people got that benefit of moving to remote work, that now employers are starting to see a challenge with bringing people back into the office. And commuting has emerged, Rose mentioned it, as the primary reason for preferring remote work. Why would I want to spend an hour in the car every day when I can get up at 7:30, start my day at 8, be done right at 5, and I'm already home? So we're seeing this every time I sit down with chief of HR at an organization. The commute comes up, of course. I mean, that's what I'm there for. But the number of complaints that pour in from employees per week. Is anybody in this call in HR? I can't really see the chat, but I'm assuming we've got to have one HR professional that can probably relate to that conversation with employees. And then, of course, in the Charlotte area, the traffic congestion has gotten a little out of hand. I do joke with the organizations that I talk to in Charlotte, because I grew up in the Northeast. I grew up in Vermont, extremely rural, like the most rural place you can think of. And when I moved here to Raleigh, I thought the traffic in Raleigh was just insane. But then I started going out to Charlotte for business, and I'm like, I will never complain about Raleigh traffic ever again. But yeah, so that's what we're seeing. And then, of course, the increasing duration of commute and the traffic congestion, it takes away from the productivity. We've got a Gallup survey that said that the nation loses 4 billion hours of productivity time at organizations to traffic congestion alone. So it's 42 hours per driver, which is crazy. But let's talk about vanpooling. Let's talk about the solution to all of the chaos and the traffic and the cost. You can go ahead and move ahead, Rose. Thanks so much. So vanpooling is a very simple, easy, and actually very flexible program. Very similar to what you would consider traditional carpooling, but with more advantages. So Enterprise does provide the vehicle. So you're looking at a new model SUV, minivan, really whatever works best for the group. We work within an organization to find employees that work the same shift time and live in a similar area or take the same route into work every day. So once we found a group of at least 4, and the reason it's 4 is because, as I mentioned, we are an extension of public transportation. We have some DOT guidelines that we have to follow to fall in that public transit. One of those being the smallest vehicle we can offer, it says 7-passenger vehicle, and then it has to be at half capacity, at least 65% of the month. So the working month, I should say. So once we've established a group of at least 4 employees, we work within that group to identify drivers. So every driver is a volunteer. So let's say Sarah, Rose, Jessica, and I, we all lived in the same area and we've all worked in Uptown. We'd get together. I would recommend every single person in the Vanpool, if you're qualified to drive, sign up to drive. You may never drive, but having a qualified driver at all times in the van is super important to the program and the functionality of it. We want to make sure we're accounting for vacation or sick days. So everyone would sign up. We would deliver that vehicle out to that group of employees. And then we work with them to set up their route. It looks different, and it's up to every single group to set up their route. In city areas, it looks often like everyone parking at a park and ride and driving in together, maybe parking at a Walmart. We have a ton of vans that park at Walmarts across the state. We work really closely with Walmart to get that approved. And then in the more rural areas, that can look like going house to house in the morning and picking people up along the way and then going into the office. But we work with whatever is convenient to that group. And then we deliver it and you guys enjoy it. On average, our van pools stay on the road anywhere from 6 to 8 years. And you can imagine the cost savings that comes along with that when we've sat down with your employer and talked to them about implementing and subsidizing a portion of this program. This is inclusive of everything. It includes all insurance. Our quotes come built in with gas built into it, tolls if you take toll routes, 24/7 roadside assistance. And now our participants can actually self-serve. We've got a mobile app, so everything can be handled in the palm of your hand. Go ahead,
So
Liz.
just at this point, does anybody have any questions? Because that was a great overview. Does anybody have any questions for Talitha about how it works or what the costs are or how it could apply in different areas? Or are there any questions at this point before Talitha
Yeah.
continues?
I can see Rebecca's like the only person I can
Yes.
actually see on
Okay.
like
I do have a question. I mean, I think I would like to understand the breakdown of the cost and who's bearing out the cost, employer, employee, the four employees, are they contributing to this in some way? I'm also interested too, you said some of your van pools stay in existence for 6 to 8 years. Is it like a lease where you can change out the people on the route year after year? That, how does that all work? Mhm.
Yes, those are great questions. So the first question, who pays for it? Actually, can you go ahead and just move to the financial slide?
Yeah.
It might be helpful. Oh, is my financial slide not on there? Okay, disregard. So I will put it in, but the way that the payment works is many different ways, right? So if the vehicle, and I thought that I had it in here, but apparently I do not, I had input the CATS pricing. So any vehicle starting or ending in Mecklenburg County would fall under the Charlotte Area Transit Systems program. So with that, CATS actually pays the first 45% of the cost. Then the remaining 55% based on the conversations with each individual work site. So, like I said, what I do is I meet with chief of HR, CEOs, CFOs, and I offer this to them as this is something you can add onto your benefits package, and you can subsidize it at certain amounts. I have some clients across the state; they subsidize the entire program. Other organizations do it percentage based. We have some clients who do it per participant based, so they'll pay up to $340 a month per person to get that IRS tax break. So it looks different at every single organization. If you were just trying to utilize it like a as like a public transit system. So let's say Rebecca worked at Bank of America and Sarah worked somewhere USAA, and there's a few different employers, and your employers didn't want to subsidize. The group of you could still participate in the program. The first 45% would be paid by CATS, and then that 55% remaining would be split among the 4 or 5 of you, however many are in the group. And what was the next question, Rebecca?
That they're on the road 6 to 8 years, right?
Oh, yes. So on average, our van pools are given to a group for 6 to 8 years. They don't have the same vehicle for that length of time. The vehicle gets swapped out usually around 25,000. But yeah, it's flexible in the sense that today the 5 of us could start, and then in a year, Rebecca decides it's not going to work for me any longer, and we find someone to replace you. So it's only a 30-day locked in program. So you're always paid 30 days ahead if you were paying individually or if your company was paying for you. You pay 30 days ahead at all times. So we only require a 30-day notice for your financial piece of it to then stop.
So Rebecca, does that make sense? And for everybody else, that you can pay individually if you find 3 employees or people that work and live in your same area, or your employer can subsidize it. But if your employer is subsidizing it, the cost might look a little bit different.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. No, that
Yeah.
makes sense. And I'm sorry to to hog, but I have one follow-up. What you said, qualified drivers. So at least 4 employees, all of whom have to be qualified drivers to be on that agreement or policy.
Technically, we only require one driver. So it could be one person in the group of 4. We recommend
Okay.
20 people sign up. Even
Sure.
if you're planning on never driving, we want you to be signed up just in case there is a day where,
Sure.
Sarah's sick, you're going to take it over
Yeah.
for the day.
Okay. And just so that the room understands, I mean, my perspective is that I'm working with new immigrants, who we may or may not have licensing happening, and that's part of the strain for them is getting to employment, but not being fully licensed yet. And so we're trying to always find ways to help expand their employment opportunities without having to rely on that driver's license. So anyway, so that's an important issue for us. Great, thank you.
Oh, 100%. And I'm actually glad that you bring that up, because where the best impact we can have in situations like that, and I see this a lot in Raleigh. I work really closely with Pilgrim's Pride in Raleigh, who has a really large immigrant workforce. And we really rely on Pilgrim's Pride to help us identify US drivers that work on those same shifts and live in those same areas. So there is a lot. I'm on site at Pilgrim's Pride a couple of times a month, just signing up drivers. So we always have someone to help move those immigrant and refugee populations. So yeah, the buy-in from the work site is crucial to the program being effective and efficient. So that's a great point. I'm going to go ahead and keep on moving. So what we do here, you're actually looking at it. So this is what I was referring to as finding people who are on the same shift as you and in the same route. So when we sit down with an organization, we offer complimentary mapping to every organization. So it's completely anonymized. We usually do this with someone in HR. They send us addresses, and then for them, it looks typically like an employee ID number where they can identify it. We, of course, cannot identify it. Our mapping team will pull together mapping. It looks very much like this. It's going to pin dot every single employee with the work site in the center, and then however far we set the radius. So typically we're looking at 10 miles out is we'll set the radius. We bring this back to the organization, and when we go ahead and implement the program, this is how we start. So if this was an organization in the Charlotte market, we'd say, hey, we've got a large group of employees here that we would like to start with. What do you think? These folks here, they're apt to burnout. They're coming from a far distance. We want to start with them. Then we'll look towards the north, get that group next. These are specialized meetings. We call these commuter connection meetings, where we would present the program to them, answer any questions they have, and then go break down the cost for them for each individual participant to see if it's something that they want to participate in. You can go ahead and move forward. So you may have already passed it. Don't even worry about going back. How we implement the program at a work site, like I said, we do mapping. It's really in 3 easy steps. So we look at the mapping, then we would have each organization sign a program agreement. It's a simple 1-pager. It's really just going to outline our responsibility to you, the organization, as a partner. We want to make sure we can come on site or virtually present to your employees and market this out to them properly. Once we've got the program agreement signed from both parties, then we work with you, the organization, to actually set up implementation. It's going to look a little bit different everywhere. The number one factor probably being employees count, like the size, how many employees you have. We're pretty strategic about how we roll it out to a new work site. But then we meet with you on a monthly basis to start that implementation process, start getting people in the vans. And then we meet again quarterly to show impact data, what the program's doing, what the return on investment looks like to you as an organization. Go ahead, Rose. And that's all she wrote. Any questions that haven't been answered? We wanted to leave some time. Um,
Talitha, there's a question in the chat. How does Vanpool work with hybrid schedules or only vanpooling a portion of the week?
we actually do have, so we have two different styles of program. We have traditional Vanpool, and then we have what we call our flexible Vanpool. So that is subscription based. So let's say you only come into the office Tuesdays and Thursdays every week. You would fit into that, of course, hybrid, flexible van pool. We would actually pull you a quote for a flexible van, and then that would be your monthly cost. That's your subscription moving forward. It's very similar to traditional in the sense that it's still a 30-day flex. So let's say, for the last 6 months, you've been traveling Tuesdays and Thursdays, but next month you're going to move to Mondays and Wednesdays. You can adjust that. Your price, of course, would not fluctuate because it's still just 2 days. But then it would signal to the driver, the group, hey, this gentleman, this young lady's route days are changing. I will say that's a very cool program. It's brand new. We do not have any flexible van pools in the greater Charlotte market yet. We are working on getting them. There's, of course, a little bit more that goes into it, right? If you're not riding 5 days a week, we've got to make sure there's a driver all 5 days, even though you're only riding two. So hopefully this summer we get our first flexible vans out there. But yeah, we implemented that about this time last year across the nation. Another thing that's already big on the West Coast, but slowly working its way to the East Coast.
Great. I do see a lot of NC Works people on this call, which is great. How does this kind of resonate for you guys? Because you guys are working more with the job seekers than the employers, but you're also seeing a little bit of the employer perspective. How is any of this sitting with you? Has anything stood out? There's a lot of second and third shift workers that you're probably working with. So transportation and getting to work is probably harder for them. Has any of this stood out as something that might be a valuable resource to offer employees, knowing that they only need four or two employers to make sure that they're able to offer their employees something valuable?
Well, the one thing I can tell you is that this is a nice tool when we work with employers and employees. It's a nice opportunity for us to talk to employers and see what they have going on, especially if they have employment shortages in the second and third shifts and they're having trouble hiring people. It is probably one of the top um, sticky points for employers when we talk to them. They not only are they trying to hire the right people, but they're trying to hire the people that can get to work. And so that's a nice opportunity that we have now as a tool in our pocket when we talk to employers. We have a business development group. Several of them are on this call, but it also allows our center leaders when they're working with individuals to maybe have some in their pocket when they're talking to somebody who may go to a company that we already have a van pool with and give them the opportunity to say, hey, I know you don't have transportation, but we have an opportunity for you to work with company ABC, and this is how you can get to and from work.
Okay. I'm really glad to hear that. Is there anything on this call, questions that you have that you still need answered in order for you to relay that information to some of these employers or to some of the business service representatives?
Perhaps taking it offline or out of this, working with Talitha,
Mm-hmm.
and then our business services team, and then having more of a polished presentation or however they can have it to deliver, and then also working, like I said, with our center leaders and Talitha to say this is how we can present it to potential employees. But yes, it sounds like a wonderful idea.
Okay. Does anybody else on the call kind of see a way that has it come up? Transportation issues, reliably getting to work. Maybe people that have found a good opportunity, but they maybe can't take it or it's not sustainable for them because of the commute. Or is there anybody on the call that maybe has worked for an employer that offered commuter benefits like van pooling or Sarah, go ahead.
There's two questions in the chat, both related to work sites or employers that are outside Mecklenburg, so wouldn't have the CAT subsidy. And maybe
Mhm.
talk a little bit about that.
Yeah,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead,
Jess.
Jessica. Whoever.
Yeah. So I'm Jessica. I actually work with Talitha very closely. I'm from CATS. So we do provide, she mentioned a 45% subsidy for van pools that either originate in Mecklenburg County or end in Mecklenburg County. So if the work site is in Shelby, I know Brittany mentioned Shelby, North Carolina being where that her work site is located. If it originates here in Mecklenburg County, we will still provide a 45% subsidy. Um, Rebecca, same. If it originates or ends in Mecklenburg County, we again would provide that subsidy. So
Yeah,
almost
so
half
it's,
of the cost of the van is already covered by CATS.
and if you and your employees sit outside, so let's say your work site's outside of Mecklenburg County and your employees are traveling from outside of Mecklenburg County, that doesn't touch the CAT subsidy at all. That would be 100% paid by either the participants or partially by the participants, partially by the work site. You still, of course, can participate. The actual pricing on the vehicle is very similar to the CATS pricing. You just don't get that 45% subsidy off the top.
Does that answer both of those questions?
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you. Thank you,
good.
Jessica.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Is there anything here that surprised you today, whether it's maybe commuting distance, why commuting is becoming more difficult, anything about van pooling that surprised you, anything that would make this maybe not work for you? Is there anything you heard that you're like, oh, I don't think that this actually would work for me? Any concerns?
I do have
Checking.
another question. Sorry. I'm the one with the
Rebecca,
questions
go ahead.
today. Sorry. Uh,
Rebecca.
I'm so sorry. Um, oh, well, no, this is very exciting. I mean, I think we've made attempts for this in the past. It is tough to get employers on board. Some of those organizations are um, really HR heavy if they're a national group that has a local, footprint, that's sometimes hard to crack through. Those partnerships, certainly the more locally owned ones, are a little bit easier to have communications with and collaborations. So my question is, in this way, if we had an employer or if we wanted to move forward with a possibility, is it Talitha, is it just we contact you, or is it helpful to have CATS come in as well and meet with the employer? How does that work?
So that's a great question. Anything that sits in Mecklenburg County, I always bring cats in on it. Because it just makes sense to have the transit agency present when we're having those kinds of conversations. I mean, they're paying a large portion of the cost for an employer. So I bring Jessica along really every time I can.
Got it.
But yeah, you would reach out to either one of us. If you reached out to her, she'd bring me in to the
Okay.
meeting. So we, like she said, we work very closely. Um, but yeah, if it's outside of Mecklenburg County, reach out to me and I will
Hmm.
meet with the organization. But anything in Mecklenburg, either one of us will loop
Okay.
in.
That's great. Awesome.
Rebecca, these are great questions, by the way.
Thank you.
Um, and just out of curiosity, because I've never heard of that situation where you might use van pooling for something like that, are there any other organizations in your community or that you work with that might find van pooling to be useful that aren't on this call that we could reach out
Yeah,
to?
sure. No, absolutely. I mean, we have there are other folks that are serving refugees here in Charlotte, that are some are might be helping with employment, some may not be. We can certainly make sure that we can connect you to them so they understand that this planning is happening. And most of our folks, historically, we've been on the east side here. I think I saw Charlotte East on the call earlier too. Greg was on for a little,
He was.
yeah, he was on. So, that's there is public transportation in that area, of course. We've talked with Jessica a lot about this, but getting to the kinds of employment that newcomers need to
Mhm.
start, it's not necessarily all just sort of packed into that zone, right? It really has to be kind of far flung. So anyway, yes, there are other organizations that I can share with you, and that gets you into some different zones. Yep, for sure.
Okay, yeah, no, I did see Greg, and I had a conversation
Hmm.
with him the other day about ways that
Hmm.
Vanpooling can help. So the Charlotte
Hmm.
is great too. But thank you.
Sure.
Okay, well, any other questions or comments for the good of the group? John, I saw you ask for Talitha's contact information. And just by the way, everybody, I will send that out along with the slides and a recording. And if there's anything else that would be helpful, John, I think you mentioned kind of a more clean cut slides that you could use to kind of just get the point across to employers or employees what this is. And I can provide that as well. But outside of that, is there anything else that would be helpful today or that you came wanting to learn and we didn't touch on yet? No. Thanks, Rebecca. Okay, well, if not, then I will let us go and give you about 15 minutes of your time back today. But thank you so much for being on this call and for kind of just participating a little bit. I will make sure I send you the recording, some notes, and just a little bit of a cleaned up slide presentation if you want to send that out to anybody else that might find it helpful. Yeah, of course, Jayla. Okay,
Thank you
Thanks.
so much. Thank you.